National Agenda, coordinating working groups on SDGs, gender, climate, and biodiversity, releasing common strategic and operational publications, and reporting their annual commitment towards climate and biodiversity. IDFC. Let's work together to implement the Sustainable Development Goals towards 2030 and beyond. What is IDFC Climate Facility? Created in 2019, the facility has been supporting IDFC members in enabling knowledge exchange and offering capacity development on climate-related topics. Our 3 goals: to strengthen climate finance expertise and capacities, to originate and develop joint climate projects, to institutionalize and facilitate collaborative work among members on climate change. Our activity lines: knowledge sharing, capacity building, access to international climate finance, joint business opportunities. In the past couple of years, the IDFC had been supporting members in mainstream common principles on mitigation and
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session, Decarbonizing Southeast Asia, the role of business sector and developing financing institution in materializing net zero ambitions. I am Noriko Yamada from Japan International Cooperation Agency. Welcome, everybody. So we have a very packed agenda today with 2 sessions with a lot of panelists. Without further ado, I would like to first invite Dr. Muto Megumi. She's our she's our Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer from the Japan International Cooperation Agency.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here this afternoon to this discussion on decarbonizing Southeast Asia. We will be discussing the role of business sector and financial institutions. The focus is Indonesia as well as Vietnam. They have embarked on a difficult path for transition to net zero. They are also JETP countries aiming at decommissioning coal. This session is organized by JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, where I come from, and we are a development agency of the Japanese government in activities such as technical assistance as well as development finance. At JICA, we have just announced our sustainability policy to align to Paris Agreement, thanks to a lot of learning opportunities with the IDFC peers. Here we are in this IDFC pavilion. We also established the Office for Sustainability, and I'm the first Chief Sustainability Officer. So we have just started on our journey. Let me mention that with our technical assistance, we are principally on the side of the partner country. We really think through together how to overcome the technical difficulties, institutional obstacles, and ultimately think about the social challenges in the journey to just transition. That's our technical assistance part. We also have the development finance activities. There, we wish to mobilize private finance as much as possible. But typically, maybe I'm over-exaggerating a little bit, but the private financiers are more on the ambitious side of the transition towards carbon neutrality. So in the field, we have found there's a real gap, and engagement alone cannot fill the gap. Maybe we have to come closer as a community. As the Chief Sustainability Officer of JICA, I will have difficulty in my own integrity if I cannot fill this gap. We cannot effectively cooperate, country, businesses, private financiers, including the development finance institutions, if we do not sit together and have an honest discussion. I think this is the start of the very good conversation. We have our speakers from Indonesia, who will tell the journey to net zero, and we will think together how to support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muto, for your very clear direction on how we're going to set the environment for this session. We were supposed to have also the Indonesia representative or co-host, Dr. Edwin, who is on his way, but, oh, yes, he just arrived. Yes, just on time. So we're waiting for Dr. Edwin Siaruhat, President Director for PT Sarana Multi-Infrastructure. Thank you. Please come to the podium. You arrived just on time.
Let me double check whether the topic is correct. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed colleagues. It's a great honor for me to stand before you today to represent PT Sarana Multi-Infrastructure, joining today as a co-host of this event together with JICA. I think to achieve in the aim to achieve the net zero ambitions, in particular commitment to shape a cleaner and a more resilient energy landscape in the future. I think we have set an ambitious targets to make this energy transition become reality, and therefore effective cooperation and innovation in energy sector is needed. PTSMI, as a special mission vehicle of Ministry of Finance, will continue support from the government together with the respectful partners. Of course, we are committed to be at the forefront of this effort. I think we hope that throughout the discussion today, we could see more clear and concrete collaboration between the government, private sector, public sectors, and also banking or financial institution to facilitate the transition toward net zero in a practical way. We, PTSMI, JICA, and all parties present at this event is one of the responsible parties to be at the cutting edge of this transformative journey. Let's work hand in hand along the government, industry leaders, and community to lead the way towards a more sustainable and resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the encouraging word and for setting the scene for our discussions. I would like to then ask to Mr. Koji Fukuda, the Chief Advisor of the JICA NDC Implementation Support Technical Assistant Project, to come to the podium and provide us some explanation for starting the session 1 of this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, a very good afternoon and assalamu alaikum to everyone, and also bonjour. Thank you, MC, for your kind introduction. My name is Koji, and I'm currently spearheading JICA's technical cooperation in Vietnam to support the implementation of NDC and, in the context of net zero. Okay. Could you turn the slide, next page, please. Okay, so I just provide, before we go into the first session, I'd like to just provide you and walk you through the some slides to set you the scene so that we can have a smooth discussion at session 1. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically, I'm going to just walk you through very quickly how the Southeast Asia looks like in terms of policy landscape at the moment. And then we look at into a more changing business environment. And then we slightly touch on the financial sector's alignment with Paris Agreement. And then some takeaways from HPCPW just took place two weeks ago in Johor Bahru, that we had a conversation with stakeholders, and then some framing questions for us to go ahead. Next page, please. Okay, in terms of the policy landscape in Southeast Asia, I think it is very clear after the Paris Agreement, also a battery of carbon neutral political pledges that happened at the Glasgow, the things has been accelerated a lot. And we are more into the implementation mode. And we have been observing the shift, very strong shift to implementation, and the stakeholders are committed to delivery of impacts to date. So we see the action to translating these pledges to actions are happening for every country within the Southeast Asia. And at the same time, this carbon neutral net zero, as you know, the pledges contributed to sort of recent updates of all the national NDCs for its respective countries to align with the ambition level that is also pledged under carbon neutral. So there is a sort of striking these linkages and between the NDC and net zero. So this nexus has been more clear at the moment. And if you look at the regulatory frameworks following the pledges, we have seen countries' effort to flesh out these domestic policies, regulations to mandate all the stakeholders to get into the actions within their own national framework, and including some measures to mandate the management of greenhouse gas emissions for private sector. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of private sector, if you look at the private sector, of course, it's it comprises of many different subsectors per se. However, we see that private sector has very unique and two attributes or characteristics. On one side, private sector is also serving as a big greenhouse gas emitter. But at the same time, they are also serving as a solution provider in terms of serving as the custodian of the decarbonizing technologies, development and deployment, at the same time providers of resources as well. So that's a very important aspect for us to elaborate now. And also at the moment, I think the private sector is standing at a very critical juncture, a very interesting time, because they are facing two different responsibilities at the moment. On one side, they are facing these new waves of domestic compliance with domestic legal requirement that sort of follows the NDC and net zero target. But at the same time, with or without these domestic legal provisions, the private sector, more or less implicated in the global supply chain, they have to follow this climate-related disclosure and sustainability requirements anyway to manage their scope 1, 2, and to some extent 3 emissions as well. So they have to do it at the moment. And in terms of the, because this trend is happening quite quickly, So we've seen also some changes within the business sector as well. In terms of the corporate behaviors, we've seen that there is a growing recognition among private sector that now the climate impact is considered as a business risk, and the sustainability consideration and the Paris Agreement alignment are more or less becoming the business imperative. So they'll have to do that. And also there is also increasing evidences of the change of mindset in business leaders, so that there are more cases of decarbonization management happening, starting from the more multinationals, but also trickling down to more national companies as well. And this effort to mainstream climate considerations into midterm business plan is up and running. And also in terms of the perception change, perhaps I would like to highlight that carbon neutral and net zero is also served not only as the as a climate agenda, but also the source of the economic growth. And also many stakeholders view or take this carbon neutral as opportunity to enhance their competitiveness. So how to stay on the competitive edge? Well, they'll have to stick to the climate change. Next slide, please. So this slide will be more elaborated in the second part of the session. I just briefly touched the surface of it. So as you know, there's also growing actions or recognition by financial sector to recognize, analyze, evaluate, mitigate the climate-related also sustainability risks. And there is also a surge of this global alliance among the banking sector and different financing institutions to adopt this race to zero policies to steer towards sustainable transition, and naming fewer NZBA and G funds. And also there is a growing importance of this transition finance. And I think in this space, the financial institution has a lot of role to play. And the challenge here is that how to best navigate this transition in a way to strike Paris-compliant decarbonization trajectory and also meeting the timeline while not undermining the stability of energy supplies. This is especially challenging in the context of Southeast Asia because Asia is growing quite rapidly and there is still high demand for energies. How to reconcile that? So it's easily said than done. So that's something that needs to be at least taken into account. And then, but the positive side of the current situation is that there is progressive development we witness in terms of adopting taxonomies by several countries, including Singapore, China, Malaysia, Indonesia as well. And also the development of guidelines and guidebooks to fill in this gap, including this Asia Transition Finance Guidelines, just led by MUFJ, our colleague, and the ECMA handbook as well for the bond side. And then if you look at the individual financing institutions, yes, they are also making a lot of effort, and we should not underlook. They are also doing a lot of work on reducing or managing on balance sheet financed emissions, and also setting the quantitative targets, quantitative financing targets towards decarbonization, and also producing sustainability products and services. So there are a lot of things happening, and this is a very interesting time. So that would actually feed into the discussion for the second session. So with that, I'd like to just stop setting the scene. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fukuda. But I would like for you to join again us here to start the session 1 as a moderator. We are starting the session 1 on country experiences of private sector engagement in net zero, and I would like to ask also the panelists for the session 1 to come to the podium. We will have Ms. Nguyen Nhat Hachi, ESG Manager, Dragon Capital Online. We have Dr. Long Quang Huy, Head of Mitigation Division from the Department of Climate Change, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment from Vietnam. And we have Ms. Miki Yamanaka, Senior Manager, CSR and Global Environment Center from Daikin Company Limited. The floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon again, and welcome. And welcome to this first session. So we have a rich panel, two offline and one online, joining us from Saigon. So let's connect later. So to start with, let me start with perhaps Ms. Yamanaka, and as the front runner of this cooling sector effort. So Ms. Yamanaka, so my questions are actually twofold. And as we just heard from my presentation per se, there's a growing expectation for private sector and enterprises to play the role of this solution provider, and through this technology and the goods and services and provisions. And the Daikin has been quite active, not only regionally but also globally in terms of decarbonization in the cooling sector through your products and services, and sometimes you're a standard for some countries as well. So my first question would be, could you tell us your corporate strategy as a Daikin company as a whole, and how, and perhaps show us some examples of how Daikin contributes to decarbonization in net zero and DC? The first question. Second question being, to provide solutions to this net zero agenda, what kind of actual constraints that you're feeling and having, and what recommendations you perhaps thresh out to the our audiences? So you have a floor.
Just have your mic closer so that we can hear you. You can. To make a presentation. Sorry.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. And then I'm really honored to be here as a panelist. So I'm not supposed to be speaking as a presentation, but in order to make you understand, have you understand what we are and what we are trying to do, and then what kind of challenges we are facing in the Southeast Asia countries. So in the beginning, would you?
Tech team, could you please scroll down the screens? Just go all the way down. Yeah. Okay,
here.
that's it.
Right, so including our company's introduction, I would like to introduce you some of the activities of ours. So in the beginning, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Miki Yamanaka of Daikin Industries. I'm in charge of global environmental activities all over the world at Daikin. Without much ado, I'd like to introduce my company. First of all, I'd like to briefly tell us what we are. We are a manufacturer specialized in air conditioners and heat pumps. And we will celebrate 100th anniversary next year. So we operate globally with more than 80% of our sales and employees in overseas. So in 2018, we have committed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, which is a very challenging goal, but we are trying and at this moment. So we emit actually in total 340 million tons of CO2 last year, including scope 1, 2, 3, everything. And then the 80% of which is emitted when our customers use our air conditioners. Because air conditioners use electricity, the CO2 emissions associated with the use of equipment are still high due to the high emission intensity. However, toward carbon neutrality, we are working to develop and promote higher energy efficient air conditioners and heat pumps and proper recovery of refrigerant. So the first one is the technology to make the air conditioners more energy efficient. That is called inverter or variable drive technology. That is essential for high efficiency air conditioners. And this technology makes immediate impact expectational outcomes, exceptional outcomes, in particularly can reduce power consumption by approximately 50%, sometimes more than 50%. It's a quite big energy saving we can make. So, however, this technology has not been widely disseminated yet in many countries, although it is already available. In particular, the implementation of appropriate energy efficiency regulations in line with ISO standard for performance evaluation is necessary to disseminate higher energy efficient air conditioners. So we have been supporting the formulation of energy efficiency policies in engaging countries in Asian countries like India, Latin America, and Middle East and Southeast Asia. In cooperation with various international organizations and governments, we will continue to develop further higher energy efficient air conditioners, train service engineers, and contribute the implementation of appropriate energy efficiency regulations. So next one is the HFC management. So HFC is a hydrofluorocarbon, which is acknowledged as GHG, as you know. So that substance is used for the refrigerant for air conditioners. Refrigerant is a key component of the air conditioners. Without refrigerant, air conditioners cannot do anything, cannot cool, heat, whatsoever. So it is a key subject, so that life cycle proper management of HFC is a key to be sustainable cooling, and then also the sustainable company of ourselves. So the refrigerant used in air conditioners, namely HFC, has been internationally agreed to be phased down, not phased out, phased down. So please remember that. So in the Kigali Amendment of the Montreal Protocol, so we believe that it is an important responsibility for manufacturers to develop using the low GWP refrigerants. We will continue to promote research and development activities of new refrigerant with further low GWP. We are now using low GWP refrigerant called R32. So GWP is 675, which is compared to the which is the one third of the conventional refrigerant used in widely all over the world. But we'd like to develop further lower GWP refrigerant. So we are aiming at less than 150 or 10 or something in a really low GWP refrigerant. And then we, as a air conditioning manufacturer, we'd like to develop technology to utilize such low GWP refrigerant. So that is contribute a lot to mitigate global warming, we believe. So particularly in many countries, vent HFCs into atmosphere when air conditioners are disposed. That is a very big challenge we are facing at this moment. So we believe it is important to recover and properly treat the HFCs in the air conditioners. Furthermore, in terms of circular economy, reclamation of refrigerants can contribute to reducing the amount of newly produced refrigerant. That is also important, we believe. So we are working to establish a framework for the proper recovery of refrigerant in Japan, the United States, Europe, Southeast Asia, such as Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore, India, etc. So we are trying to establish recovery schemes to be more practical. The emission control regulation help facilitate properly managed HFCs. Financial support also is needed and effectively to make the regulatory tool effective. So today we can utilize a digital technology to track the management of the HFCs throughout life cycle too, which will play an important role. So let me introduce a case study. We are working in Vietnam. Sorry, the slide is kind of messy, but I will try to make it simple. Sorry. So this is a case study as JCM project supported by the Environmental Ministry of Japan. We are working with other Japanese companies to establish a refrigerant management scheme in Vietnam. This is the flow. The refrigerant will be recovered from end users and then transferred to the collection site to be inspected and charged into larger cylinder, and then transferred to destruction site or reclamation site. All processes will be tracked by a tracking system. To make it feasible, all stakeholders must work together and cooperate. The emission control regulation is necessary, of course, but we need financial support along with the regulation. Financial support for initial costs for recovery, tools, and facilities for reclamation and destruction. That's a very, very important part. Also, we need the financial support for operational cost as well. It can be partially covered by destruction credits generated by JCM, yes. But in addition to destruction credits, we should consider to create credits out of reclamation. It has not been considered under JCM yet, but I believe that it should be considered as reclamation of refrigerant is necessary from the viewpoint of circular economy, while both destruction and reclamation credits can be considered as incentive to facilitate the effective and complete enactment of the emission control regulation. So another challenge is the difficulty and the time-consuming processes involved in obtaining necessary licenses and permits to operate as business. I sincerely ask governments to consider how to solve such matter, such challenge, because this matter and the challenge needs immediate attention. We have to do something right away. So we need something to do in collaboration with private sector and government sector and everything. So, and then also here is the financial people gathered together. So I'd like to ask, government in the financial sector's support as well. By solving all the challenges together, then I believe that we can utilize proper management of the refrigerant and then also sustainable cooling, so which lead to the decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Yamanaka, for very detailed explanation, including the concrete evidences of the technologies and also the work that you have been doing in Vietnam. And we heard your challenges. I think that some parts will be carried over to the second session, I think, for consideration as well. And particularly your part is relevant because, as you know, the COP presidency at the moment is also keen to this global cooling pledge. So, yeah, I think this area continues on. Now, I'd like to invite a colleague from in distance. I'd like to invite Ms. Gwenyat Haji from Dragon Capital, based in Ho Chi Minh City. I think she's connecting online. Ms. Chi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much for joining, and very good evening for you. And thank you for joining us from down Ho Chi Minh City. Very pleasure to have you here in Dubai. And Ms. Chi, also I would like to throw two set of questions to you for your response. And as you know, the Dragon Capital, I think you are also the forefront of this, investment capital. You're investing a lot of projects, and you have a vast variety of a portfolio in Vietnam. You're quite active, and we have a conversation beforehand. And could you, for the sake of the audiences, could you also share with your experiences and also ongoing effort how your capital, the firm, try to decarbonize or greening your investment portfolio per se? And so do you at the same time foresee more potential for decarbonization projects in Vietnam? How do you see the landscape? That's the first question. And second question being, from the investor's perspective, where do you see the challenges still remaining for you, for your company to go ahead with the decarbonization project? So Ms. Chi, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good evening from Vietnam and maybe afternoon for those in Dubai. Um, Thank you. Firstly, thank you very much to let me in this important event. Let me go directly to the question. Given the background, Vietnam commitment to net zero emission in 2050, we could see a dramatically transition throughout the economic, especially power sector and building and etc. Many sector involved into the transition. So, as a long-term institutional investor in Vietnam, Dragon Capital, we are now the longest established independent fund manager based in the capital markets of Vietnam, with the AUM of $5 billion. So we consider the decarbonization or go green, both in investment and active ownership are the key tools supporting the transition to green. Firstly, talking about investment, uh, we have an thematic investment focusing on in renewable energy, and we're using our balances apart from the $5 billion year AUM that I mentioned earlier to and using the green loan for those investment. We have the strengthened UR process to screening for the project. And now currently we have three solar power plant in Vietnam, and uh, that's one of the part of our green investment. Secondly, we think that as we are the institutional investor in Vietnam on the frontier market, so we think that the active ownership on the advocacies is very important to help filling the gap between international and national standard. So we actively engage with policymaker, research institution, as well as our investing company. Mm, Regarding to the recently we have signed a strategic agreement with the Institute of Strategic and Policy on Natural Resources and Environment. Is the short name ISPONRE. This institute is under Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. So the strategic agreement is on environmental protection and biodiversity. And it lasts for 3 years. Uh, Specifically, the collaboration will help for development of criteria to evaluate biodiversity in Vietnam and to form a conservation market akin to the current carbon market. In November last year, we, Icepondre and Dragon Capital, organized a workshop to announce the research result on the valuation of the ecosystem service in two important biodiversity area. First one in Cà Mau Mangrove in the south of Vietnam, and the second one is Pumat National Park in Nghệ An province, which is in the central area of Vietnam. So, further, we also create a Dragon Capital Chair in Biodiversity Economics at the University of Exeter in UK. So, this chair is created in 2020, and we're expecting over the next 5 years, Dragon Capital and the University of Exeter will together commit about 1.6 million pounds to fund the new position, which will look to address the central question of whether there is any correlation between biodiversity and the success of the economy, and whether individuals and organizations can and should place an economic value on biodiversity. Um, yeah. So further, actually, the engagement with the investee company, um, we you may know that we have adopted TCFD, the Task Force Climate Financial Disclosure Framework, to assess the climate-related risks associated with our investment portfolio since 2020. So as of now, we have 3 years to adopt the framework, and with the support from a climate tech company, namely Intencell Limited, based in Hong Kong. The company helped us to estimate the physical risk in terms of the climate value at risk, how much dollar we could lose throughout the portfolio, and also the transition risk at the portfolio level. We also dig deeper through every investment to understand where our risks are. And actually, we using the result from the assessment to engage with our investing company, for example, steelmaker company, chemical company, to share with them how much carbon emission they contribute to our portfolio. And you may know that transition it could take year. So we took this opportunity to keep go along and engagement closely with our investment company, go along with them on the transition journey, and sharing with them some reduction action if possible to them. And the collaboration between us and investing company keep going on, and hopefully in future it could make some the positive outcome. um, Regarding to the second question, um, from an investor perspective, um, I believe that there are still a lot of challenge need to be addressed to enable the further investment into green for private sector. Um, Thirdly, I think the financial institution capacity, we green financing is more technical compared to conventional financing. Banker or financial institutes like us struggle to understand the taxonomy of green finance, terminology, or experience in the field. So we feel complicated in evaluating and approving the green financing application that could match the technical standard. Um, Another challenge could be the eligible investment or pilot project in the market. Take an example of investment in carbon offset project. So like I introduced at the first, we have 3 solar power plant. So the solar power plant previous is eligible to well-known verification entity like Gold Standard, Vera, but now cannot get the certification from those standards, and we need to change to other, and we need to look to other verification entity. So I mean that the pilot project for green, for carbon offset is still a challenge to the investor to find the eligible investment to meet their criteria. Or another example, like when a company want to um, reach the green finance, they need to upgrade their management system, especially in terms of the environmental and social ESG term recently. And they need to build the environmental social management system, the capacity in-house to meet the international and to meet the stringent criteria of the green financing. Yeah, of course, the legal framework always an uncertainty or the challenge for investor, and the clear or consistent policy support green investment is very crucial for attracting and retain investment. And I think the last challenge I would like to share could be the market demand and consumer. When we go to green investment, it's important to find the end consumer because the green product is recently, is currently more expensive than the convention product. So that's why we need to find the consumer and find the market to have the big demand. to push produce the products. Yeah, that's all from me, Koji.
Okay, Sinkamon, Ms. Chi, and thank you for your interventions. I think it's very clear that you mentioned about your strength of your companies. You're working on several projects, including PVs. At the same time, you raised a couple of challenges. I think that's also relevant to not only to your company, but also to others, and including this the understanding of technical side of the taxonomy as well, setting your own taxonomy, and also as an evaluation standard, and also eligibility criteria verification part of the challenges, and ESG capacity in-house. And those are the sort of something also to be carried on for next discussion. Thank you very much, Ms. Chi. And now, thank you for waiting, Mr. Hui. And now we are turning onto the government side. Yep. And because of this G2B partnership, we are now focusing on particularly B part, but I think initiation by the government side is also critical to forge this meaningful partnership. And particularly the pledges are coming from government. And now you are in the position to sort of asking all the stakeholders to collaborate in implementing this NDC and also net zero to be able to transition to this decarbonized pathway. So with that said, so Mr. Hui, so in Vietnam, you are also have an NDC, and you are now implementing it in the context of a net zero direction. And particularly, you have already devised legal foundations, including the revised law environment protection, also decree number 6 guiding the mitigation. I think that's a very good start. Maybe not perfect, but a good start to navigate the people. And now, private sector engagement and investment also must, I think, as part of your implementation. So what concrete measures does your government really take to facilitate private sector come aboard and also invest towards decarbonization? Perhaps you can tap a little bit on this recent JETP initiative resource mobilization plan as well. And the second question being, of course, from your central government perspective, you also face challenges for sure. So what are the challenges that you can see from your side of this landscape, Mr. Hui?
Thanks, Koji, and good evening, and thank you very much for having me here. And that's a very interesting session here, and I think that in the past few days here at COP28 that we all talk about energy transition and engagement of business sector and so on. Well, that's a very good question that Koji raised there. So what for the first one is be about what a concrete action that the government would take to ensure that the participation and engagement from private sector. I'm going to say that, well, we have several action, actually, not really a single one to be called concrete, really. But before I go into that, let me provide you with a bit of picture there. Before 2021, before COP26, private sector actually didn't know that they had the responsibility for net zero. They know that they would have a responsibility for GHG emission reduction to some certain level, accordingly to the NDC. And we had the NDC by 2020 submitted to UNFCCC already. And 2021, we committed with net zero at COP26. So 2022, we revised our NDC, and with that revised one, we doubled the commitment. Yeah, so with that doubling commitment like that, the government can't reach the objective by using policy measure alone. Yeah, but for 2020, that with the current existing work that for 2020 objective, that with the current existing work that governed by several laws, for example, law on energy efficiency and conservation, and law on environmental protection, and with many of those GHG emission reduction measures been going on. So if we just scale that up a little bit and then get that MRV properly, then we actually can achieve that. But when we double that, almost double that in 2022, the government can't do that. Impossible to do that by using the policy measure alone. So that when we need to get the private sector on board, and immediately. And then energy transition trend arose, and that people, we've been doing energy transition all the time actually, right? And in Vietnam in the past 20 years, we from 2% in our energy mix. 20 years ago, we only 2% of wind and solar power, and now we about 21% in the past 20 years. That's a massive change, and we okay, but we still okay with all industry and development. And I believe that we can double that in the next 20 years. But we actually have to double that in 7 years, right? So basically, you packed the work of 2 or 3 decades into 5, 6, 7 years. So that requires a lot of work, a lot of policies, a lot of finance, yeah, and people and personnel into the system. Luckily that with all of those things, that actually opened the gate to a much larger and fastest growing markets for the business sector. And the business sector, they can see that. They can see that, and they can take the responsibility. And in fact, in a way, they're pushing the government to do something, so they can actually tap into that kind of market. So that comes to the JETP, as you say, that we the third country in the world after South Africa and Indonesia to join the Just Energy Transition Partnership, JETP. But we're the first to announce our resource mobilization plan a few days ago here at COP28. And negotiation gonna start very soon, yeah, from after this one. And when negotiation starts, then it means, private sector, the investor, the bank system, the government, and the community, all the stakeholders, we have to sit down together. And those voices will come to us on what kind of policy the government got to make. So what we have done so far, what I would call concrete, is at least so far, within the very short 2-year term, we get everybody together and be interested in one single thing. And we know that that one single thing will help with our commitment. We don't know yet how much that will help, because it depends on the scale, depends on the speed and the scope of the energy transition activities and projects that gonna come out soon. But we know that it's gonna help. So the next step is that, we get everybody together, start the negotiation, and then, start implementing the projects. And we have to learn by doing, and then see that, what we can adjust to make sure that, the things will go smoothly. Past few days here at COP28, in all our size events and meetings and seminars and webinars, that we all talk about how the business sector can help from different perspectives. Yeah, so that to answer the first questions. For the second questions is that what would be the challenges that we have in terms of for this energy transition in particular, and then business engagement? We have many, but look from the government's perspective, we have to look at an overall picture. And as I said yesterday, that in one of the events, that energy transition may be number 1 priority now, but it's not the only priority, because we have many other priorities in our countries, and likewise in other countries as well. For example, that while we very much look forward to loss and damage fund to be operated, and luckily that we got it a little bit this COP already in the first few days, quite surprising. And we hope that energy transition process would contribute to all those priorities. That's why we got the just part. And the first challenge would be to ensure that just part works in Vietnam, because we always say that our Prime Minister says there's no one left behind, but in fact it's very difficult to do that, because we need to know everybody before we make sure that no one is left behind. So that's the problem. That's the first challenge. The second challenge is that our legal system is our work, our responsibility. It's not complete, especially on financing flows and how to get all the money out there, all financial flow from different investors going to Vietnam, invested in energy transition projects, and still comply with all the existing laws and regulations in a much quicker manner. So that's a problem, because we all know that making a law, making a legal document takes time and procedure, but we may need to create another mechanism for that kind of project. But quite frankly, we don't know that yet. We're still thinking. So that's the second challenge. The third challenge is that when all the new technologies and projects come into Vietnam, we need people to operate that and make sure that it's sustainable. Yeah, so that comes to about capacity building. It comes about the training for people in Vietnam to get used to that. Yeah, and to upscale that, expand that, and duplicate it from one place to another. So those are the things that it's not private sector can do, or not government can do alone. Everybody got to do. That's why our projects in Vietnam here that Cozy Sung here is leading. We try to do that through our Vietnam Chamber for Commerce and Industry, which is the equivalent to Kaidan Land in Japan, or equivalent to business association in other countries, to get companies together. But our resources are limited. So we did some example, and then we asked the companies to do the same for other companies. So we try to multiply it like that. And in fact, in a few subsectors have been doing that already. Not perfect, but it's a good start. So those are the what on top of my head on the two questions that you got, and I hope that suffices. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Phui, for your kind intervention. And I think this message is very clear, and include that how challenging it is to squeeze all this transition that needs to be happen within like 7-8 years. That's quite challenging, and all the associated challenges. So ladies and gentlemen, if you indulge me, I would like to just close this session, because all the challenges that we see perhaps will be to some extent carried over to the second panel, which is also a very rich panel for discussing how to finance that as well. So let me just very briefly capture some takeaways from the first session. So in this session, we have captured, bring together the different sort of actors within the private sector, both the manufacturer, but also investment, institutional investor, also government side. And we just showcase in the case of Vietnam, how each player and trying their best to gear toward decarbonization, but also the challenges that they face from their positions. And from Ms. Yamanaka, we heard that all this showcasing of specific technologies, including high efficient AC and also heat pumps, and also refrigerant as well, and also this recovering of HFC as important exercise, and your effort to R&D the new refrigerant. That takes a lot of time, but I think it's worth it. The challenges being the financial upfront, how to cover the upfront financing, and also the time it takes. I think time matters, right, in terms of private sector to acquire necessary permit licensing to scale up the action. So to move from just a pilot. So that's something that also to be carried over to government side as well. And from Dragon Capital, we also heard the examples of some renewable energy investment already up and running. But at the same time, we hear several challenges in terms of the setting up their own standard to evaluate their project in terms of taxonomies and what's green and how we fit into the ESG framework, and also some eligibility criteria and certification when it comes to the carbon credit. That's something also they are having a little bit of challenge. And also coming up with the new products, also that's something to be mentioned. And then the other challenges mentioned from Mr. Hui is that, of course, we need to first of all build capacity of people to run all technologies and to run the system as a whole, I think. And also, and sorry, my script is too bad. And also how to make the just part work, and also the legal systems, how to expedite. That's quite a challenge, but I hope you will be succeeding doing that for the benefit of all the private sector. So more to be said, but let me conclude, and please join me a big round of applause for the panelists for their contributions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
For the interesting session that we just heard, I would like to now invite our second session, the role of financing institutions. And we will have as a moderator, Mr. Masamichi Kono, Senior Advisor of MUFJ. Please come to the front. And we have panelists from different places. First, Mr. Pradana Murthy from PTM SMI. Dr. Megumi Muto, also from JICA. Mr. Hiroshi Ota, Fellow Sustainability Office, Daiichi Life Holdings. Ms. Chikako Matsumoto, Executive Officer, Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Holdings. Can we all squeeze? Yes? Okay, thank you very much. Kono-san, I leave the session to you. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Well, I should really thank everyone here at this late hour. It's been a long day for you already. So I'll try to make this as informal and interesting as possible. But anyway, I'm Masamichi Kono. I'm now advising MUFG Bank, and also I'm a trustee of the IFRS Foundation developing those sustainability disclosure standards. But in my previous life, I was more in the realm of financial regulation and supervision, and at the OECD, actually, I was overseeing the Environment Directorate and the Financial Affairs Directorate. So I spent a lot of time discussing those 30,000 feet issues of climate finance. And so if you would allow me, I would just like to, let's say, put this in somewhat of a context, because well, Koji-san mentioned in the previous session that we're now really going to implement what we've been discussing, or what principles have been developed. And yes, there is now a wealth of reports, of recommendations, guidance, but on the other hand, I think we are really finding that implementation is critically important, but also very, very difficult. But then, well, this is a certain estimate, but achieving net zero by 2050, if we are really serious about this, it will require low carbon investments to increase 5-fold in the emerging markets and the developing countries. Now, of course, you can extend this to 2060 or 65. It's really up to governments to decide that. But still, I mean, you are going to really need trillions of US dollars per year. I mean, let's say this estimate says 2 trillion per year. And that is, again, a 5-fold increase that we have to achieve almost as of tomorrow. And on the other hand, there was a pledge made in the context of COP to provide $100 billion of finance from advanced countries to developing countries. But then even this actually materializes, and actually at the OECD we were actually worried that we may not be able to achieve this by the due date of 2020. It looks like it's going to be achieved soon, but this is still really a small fraction of what we need. So what I'm spending time on explaining is that the bulk of financing for low carbon investments, no matter what commitments we have, will need to come from the private sector. And so we really have to really put this into practice in the private sector. And for the private sector to be able to provide the financing, there are, as you would imagine, so many challenges. And one thing I often heard in the past is that there are not enough bankable projects or no economic or social incentives, no regulation, no common definition, and so on. But, well, we're making some progress on those fronts, but and then of course we often hear that there's no shortage of money out there in the private sector. So, but I doubt this argument about bankability, by the way, because if we have the right policy measures, if we have proper coordination between public and private sectors, and a proper structure of risk sharing, proper incentives, including, of course, the use of blended finance, I would imagine that many more projects and entities will become bankable. And so really, we should really find a way of how to accelerate this process of coming up with innovative financial products, better collaboration, and certainly the private sector now, I think we are really interested and enthusiastic about supporting low carbon investment finance in the EMDs, and I can feel this in this COP as well, and so there must be some ways of making this real. Now, so in this session, I'm fortunate to have very knowledgeable experts from various sectors of the private financial industry. And we have Muto-san from JICA, who will be able to provide insights from the official development institution, finance institution side. And we also have our colleague from emerging country where you have actually been working on infrastructure finance on the ground, which will be really important for us to know better what the issues are to do better. And so in the first round, I would like to really ask each of our panelists to maybe explain what you are doing, not necessarily in your individual institutions, but more broadly. I mean, I'm not going to force you to represent the whole industry, but at least maybe your observations of what's happening around you. And also maybe refer to some challenges that you're encountering. And then in the second round, we would really like to talk about the better collaboration, better cooperation, and certainly more attuned or catered to the needs of the EMDs, because of course we often are told that GFANS members are too ambitious or too what's the word, aspirational. But now GFANS, having worked with the JETPs of Indonesia and Vietnam, we are finding that now we really need to work hard to make our pledges real, and this requires some thinking out of the box. So without further ado, may I have Chicago-san from Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Holdings to kickstart this first round.
I was hoping I would be the last one to speak, but yes, thank you, Kono-san. I'm working right now in the private sector. We are the fourth largest within our holdings, which is the financial group, we have 3 core companies, one of which is the Trust Bank, which is the 4th largest bank in Japan, and then 2 asset management companies. These asset management companies have the largest asset under management in Japan, and then also most likely in Asia too. But today I'd like to talk more about the Trust Bank banking work. So we have, as a group, we have a corporate purpose, which is basically creating social and economic returns, both of them. And then when we say social and economic returns, it also means impact too, both in economic and social impact. And then when we talk about the social impact, it means that we want to also think about what kind of impact we want to create in the society and so on. But then that whether financing, debt finance, equity investment, when we are doing, we have to also make sure that we are having a market competitive financial returns. So that's what we are trying to do when we also create the impact, whether it's in Japan or the advanced economy or emerging and developing economies. So that's really the principle. And with that regard, we have started the new investment program, which is called the Impact Equity Investment Program, started about 2 years ago, and we have a mandate of deploying about 3.3 billion US dollar worth of the investment, starting last year over the next 10 years. So compared to the trillions of dollars that Kono-san mentioned, it's a really, really drop in the ocean type of amount. However, as a commercial bank, this and equity investment program, it is a very, very big program. I don't think anyone in Japan has this scale of equity investment program yet. So I'm very excited. And then this resource actually coming from unwinding cross-holdings of the equities. Which is also quite an issue in Japan, blocking, clogging the financial flow within the equity market and then the financial market in Japan. So that's quite a meaningful endeavor, I think, for me. And then so where we are really investing, mostly I think in Japan, but also advanced economy. But then we also started to use this fund to invest in emerging economies, because in our bank, even though we are the 4th largest bank, we still lacking the talent, which have really can properly assess country risk, political risk, regulatory risk, economic risk, and financial risk, all those kind of risks in emerging market. So we are also using the debt finance, but then this an equity program is actually a really big one, because we can take absorb more risks, and then we can also expect the upside too. With the debt, upside is really limited. So when we risk is relatively large, it is really difficult to use debt to go into these a new market, especially with the decarbonization going on. It also means that the economy is really transforming. Companies or the projects are also transforming, and then lots of new things going on. So we think equity is a good way of testing the water, going in, and then learning by doing, the previous session also mentioned. And so what we are doing right now, we started to also invest Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, India, and then also some South America, and then we also looking into a way of investing in Africa. And I just like to mention a little. Maybe I should pass on. Maybe just a little bit more. In just like in talking about like what kind of a project we are really investing equity investment. Like I went to see one of the examples in Bangkok 2 months ago. We have invested in a real estate development project, which has a really like both like diversity issue. Like a theme and the decarbonization themes. So this is a really a project, being now developed between the airport and the Bangkok city. It is basically developing a new town with a multi-generational residential complex, some like commercial complex, and then like senior homes, some like resort, but then they are also growing a forest together. So the name is like a forestia, meaning that's a kind of a town within the forest. So that the core of the town is really a forest. They are using the really famous Japanese methodology, Miyawaki method, to grow the forest. And then, so I actually went to see the development, and it was actually very, very impressive. Like they're all like science-based. They also involve lots of like scientists and researchers to study the biodiversity there and how to really protect them, and as like they build the town. So that's one thing. In Vietnam, we are partnering with the local bank, and then we created the joint venture of a leasing company. So this leasing company is leasing PV panels. And then now we are also talking with the, I think, our colleagues are maybe talking with the JICA office and so on, but we are also talking with the US DFC. Yes, yeah, to expand this business more towards maybe like kind of a industrial park or the data center and so on. So, and then we are also investing, other area we are investing is investing a forest fund with a carbon credit. So with that, we are planning to invest about like 100 million probably in total, but we want to do some kind of testing. So we are investing different really regions in the world, and then different type of forest business together with the way of creating a carbon credit. So this is those are the things like we are doing. The point is really like we are looking, when we are really going on, we want to have a long-term local partners, and that's really key. And then I have also have I'm right now working in the private sector, banking sector in Japan, but I used to work in the World Bank group. So when I go abroad, I'm trying to kind of connect our local offices with not only to like beyond JICA's office. I think our teams can reach to the JICA and the JETRO and so on, but then they don't know really well with the IBRD or IFC, other regional development bank. So try to connect them with the local offices so that like they can really expand this kind of work in the emerging market and developing countries. So. Let me stop here.
Thank you so much. What you just mentioned really sounds like an excellent example of collaboration across the various types of financial institutions and public-private sector collaboration. But anyway, if I may next ask Ota-san to discuss this from a slightly different angle. Well, you're, of course, with a life insurance company at the moment, but you also have a long background in the Bank of Japan and the Financial Services Agency, so maybe you have a more horizontal view of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kono-san, and thank you very much for the IDFC members institutions to invite me to this panel. It's my great honor and pleasure. And actually, I'm a bit reluctant to speak after Matsumoto-san spoke so great things in investing in Southeast Asia. Well, let me start with the some basic nature of insurance business. So our business is, of course, to provide a life insurance product. and we collect insurance premiums and put them together, and we invest them in safe assets. And you see, insurance contracts normally are very long term, and so we have, I can say maybe we have stable money to invest. And we don't need to earn very high return, but we need just safe and sound return. That's the most important thing for us. And we have been doing this business for a long time. We have already celebrated our 100-year anniversary, and within some years, we're going to have 125 years anniversary. So we have been doing this for a long time, and we think we are good at providing stable funds to Japanese leading industries, mostly power sectors or steel companies or chemical companies, those high-emitting sectors. And we have been successfully operating our business or our investment to attain to the net zero goal at 2050 for those investment in Japan. But what we are not good at is that the overseas investment, and especially the investment in emerging markets or developing economies. There are many, maybe various reasons for that. But I think the biggest one is there is not, at least from our point of view, enough products or projects that we can take risks. Well, until a few years ago, we thought that's okay, or there is nothing we can do. But now that money floating to developing economies to act against climate change are significantly insufficient, we think more and more that how we, Dai-ichi Life, can mobilize money without taking too much risks and failing our responsibility to repay insurance payments to policyholders who are mostly low to middle income households, just like us. But very recently, we can started to have some investment. One example that I can share with you today is that we participated in a fund operated by BlackRock, and they started emerging market infrastructure fund, and their number one project is to invest in the solar panel deployment project in Philippines. So we are very glad at being a member of this investment. And I think that the mobilizing capital, as I said, is not advancing as fast as expected. But I think in this scope, at least, or at last, international finance community came to be aware of the gap, the huge gap, and its urgency, and the recognition that we financial institutions can take to play. So as Kono-san said, we, Dai-ichi Life, is a member of the GFANs, and we are very glad to see that some concrete actions are taking place between the member of GFANs and MDVs like World Bank. For example, one example is the private sector investment lab by the World Bank. Some financial institutions participated in this lab, and why this initiative is called lab is that it is to share innovative idea to mobilize capital to emerging economies. For example, providing insurance from World Bank, or creating a market to securitize a product that institutions made. So those innovative ideas would help accelerate the mobilization to the emerging economies. So I think there are much more to do for us, and I'm very looking forward to be participating in it. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, you gave us some hints about where we can probably enhance cooperation and think out of the box. And so maybe we'll come back to that point in our second round, and more concretely, who can work together better. And in terms of your point about insurance, securitization, all those ideas that in the past maybe we weren't so sure about, or not using it enough. And securitization, in a way, took on a bad name after the financial crisis, but now maybe we can reinvent it for the sake of net zero and sustainability. So thank you so much. And can I now turn to Mr. Murthy? Thank you for your patience, by the way, because I think you will give us some hints about how those financial institutions in the so-called advanced countries or Japan can really support infrastructure development in your country. And of course, you are really there to support your infrastructure. And by the way, when I mentioned $2 trillion per year, that is basically infrastructure investment. And at the OECD, we calculate even bigger figures that will be needed for the net zero transition. So could you please give us your thoughts?
Thank you, Kono-san, and thank you for inviting us here. And I think I would just like to follow up in more detail of what our CEO just gave to us a few moments ago. I think to put into context, Indonesia is not new to energy transition. Actually, we have actually trying to push for renewable energy development and system improvement, maybe since Paris Agreement or even before that. Yeah, but I think right now the push is even greater, and there are supports coming from international communities like JETP. Yeah. I think to put into numbers, our Ministry of Finance already declared that to achieve net zero emission target just from the energy sector alone, it will require around $250 billion US. And JETP already calculated, at least until 2030, 75 billion will be required to be invested in renewable energy. The rest will be needed for transmissions, grid connections, and smart grid, because our grid is not yet connected at the moment, and it's not very smart yet. So to support renewable energy uptake, then we need to have a super smart grid, basically. We are a country of 6,000 inhabited islands, and renewable energy sources even more spread out across the 17,000 islands. And our institutions is, as you said, initially it was infrastructure financing corporations owned by the state, the Indonesia government. However, we are already being recognized in our latest financial sector law as Indonesia National Development Finance Institutions, meaning that it already reflected the amount of mandates and the continuous expansion of our mandates throughout the years. As you know, probably SMIs not only finance corporations or business entities, but also we provide finance to municipalities or local governments. Of our 7.6 billion asset, 70% of our financing assets is in the private sector, and 30% is in the public sector. Into the net zero or energy transitions, we have actually started much earlier, which is in 2010. It was our first renewable energy project. And 2016, we have developed safeguard frameworks as well as sustainability divisions formations. And 2018, we have, 2017, we were the first accredited entity in Southeast Asia for Green Climate Fund. And 2018, we established SDG Indonesia One blended finance platform. And that's already some of the $3.2 billion already been dispersed to projects. The most important part is actually the technical assistance to provide bankable and feasible projects. Yeah. I think I can give you many examples of that later on, but also in 2018, we were the first corporations in Indonesia to issue local green bond. And I think we are aspiring to increase our exposure and participation to also someday, yeah, given the right market condition, to also issue global green bond. But at least this year, we have subscribed to a 700 million sustainability-linked loan that is also being partial co-arranged by MUFG as well. And that was subscribed by more than 40 banks in the Asia Pacific regions. So these are the kind of innovations as well as our activities to deepen the market, the financial market, as well as in SDG Indonesia One, we have been very active to try to blend technical assistance with concessional loans. I think we have been given concessional facilities from AFD of France as well as from ADB that we combine with technical assistance. We also collaborated in the form of investment grants. Yeah, so we have some investment grants also being mobilized to project to meet their feasibility. So therefore, commercial financing can comes in. Yeah, I think those are a few examples, and we also being creative, like in the local currency, we provided, like for example, a standby facility to a hydro power developer. So with our standby facility, they can actually increase the credibility or their bond issuance. Yeah. So they go from A- rating, local rating, to AAA local rating, which is similar to ours. So I think those kind of innovations and examples that we have provided so far will be the foundations or capital for us to scale up, because we have been appointed by our government to become the Energy Transition Mechanism Country Platform Manager. It's another blended finance platform, but this time not only focus on renewable energy, but one big part of our energy transition is coal transition. And this will require probably a harder push from financial institutions, including us, to try to finance what people call as stranded assets. Yeah. I think one of the examples, there's the Cirebon Power, which is coincidentally also partially owned by a Japanese entity. We'll try together with ADB, INA, and GAP. We'll try to finance or refinance this asset in the light to achieve 7 years earlier termination. So I think we need to do something on coal because coal is 60% of our fleet. So if we don't do anything about our coal transitions, we cannot actually scale up renewable energy. Sorry to be long, but I hope this gives enough information. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Actually, particularly your last point about this coal phase out or managing the transition away from coal. This really, we can understand, is critically important, not just for Indonesia's energy transition, but also for the whole region. And so the examples that you provided already, I think, will be extremely helpful. So in the second round, maybe I will try to seek your insights into how we can do better. Now, Muto-san, so, well, you've heard all those, well, I would say encouraging new and innovative financing structures, products, methods, and also a willingness to invest more. And of course, we have all appreciated a lot of collaboration, a lot of support from JICA as a development finance institution. And of course, you may be receiving many calls to provide more concessionary finance, and I'm sorry that, of course, with your limited resources, you can't say yes to all of the requests. But maybe if you could give us a certain, let's say, overview of where you are exactly, and of course, later on, we would like to also hear from you what we can do better to support your work, and you can also perhaps provide support for the private sector to be really scale up urgently the investment. Please.
Thank you very much, Kono-san. I think as a development finance institution, I will start talking about the OECD level discussions on blended finance. I've been involved in these discussions at defining blended finance, how to combine concessional finance, development finance with the private sector finance to bring SDGs and climate impact. That I have been involved in that, and certain typologies emerged. So guarantees is the most powerful tool. And then first loss in structures is another tool. But there is also a lot of utility in technical assistance and then grant. And in addition, of course, we have the concessional finance, which is more in terms of concessionality in the terms and conditions. And as Matsumoto-san has alluded to, equity. So within that big world of typology, I think I tried to connect what we have discussed in the previous session, right? I think from Vietnam, the government side, we heard the necessity for technical assistance, not just for the capacity, but for the just part of the transition and also legal framework. And then with the private, from the private sector, we have heard risks in technology, risks in scaling up. So these are more calling for this grants or first loss guarantee types. But also we have heard this more alignment in the taxonomies. And maybe in the next round, we can talk about that a little bit more. Okay. Coming back to JICA, what we can offer, we are a very unique development finance institution in that we have a massive technical assistance part, which has been the traditional side of JICA. And there, we have been assisting, for example, capacities, technical master planning, feasibility studies, legal frameworks. So I think we are catering to what the Vietnamese government were pointing to. And the same kind of like a program we have deployed and supported for the causes in the Indonesian case. Okay, so technical assistance, we are strong. But then we don't have a guarantee, we don't have a first loss. What we are doing is really trying to deploy our concessionality in the financing as much as possible, especially not just in individual projects, but in operating in the context of joint co-financing with the Asian Development Bank. We have a facility called LEAP, Leading Infrastructure for Asian and Pacific, and there, with our concessional financing, we do equity participation in that account, and we can do blended concessional financing in individual projects. For example, waste to energy project in Vietnam, and also in Laos we have supported the wind power that will eventually benefit demand in Vietnam. So these are what we have been doing, but we could do more. This is my personal opinion, but maybe we can discuss with the Japanese government with more capacities, maybe not just in JICA, but Japan in general, on guarantees, first loss, these instruments that our European peers, DFIs, as well as US DFC are deploying. This is what I have as my picture. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very candid explanation, plus your personal thoughts, because actually, first, I'm also glad you mentioned your technical assistance part, because I personally actually was, for a very short period, a JICA technical expert working with the Indonesian Central Bank to develop the deposit insurance system. And I found this really very, very personally rewarding, in the sense that eventually Indonesia did enact a deposit insurance system. And so we were very happy to see it happen. And maybe that's also something that you can let's say, combine with your financing endeavors, because one difficulty we really find in all this work towards providing transition finance, particularly in EMD, is that on both sides, the supply side and the demand side, we don't have enough expertise, we don't have enough data, we don't have basically enough information about which projects can be truly helpful for the transition pathway. And we have to really work together, put things together in a kind of a knowledge consortium. And in that respect, of course, I think JICA really has a potential there to be coordinating this. And in fact, I've also had discussions with the Asian Development Bank, and I hear about our colleagues discussing with the World Bank, also with other institutions. I happen to have a meeting with IFC here in this COP, we're all talking about combining our knowledge, combining our ideas, putting together a credible data repository, and so all those really could lead to results based on stronger collaboration amongst the people involved. So again, coming back to our experts, could perhaps each of you really mention where you think we can do better, and of course the whole topic of this session being closer collaboration, what's really needed. And by the way, for this thing about the Japanese government, I think we should really ask the Japanese government to give more capacity to JICA to do its job properly. So anyway, I don't think this is broadcast. So, Chikaku-san, could you start again?
I think as Muto-san mentioned, you mentioned about basically, financial tools to support the blended kind of a private-public, collaborations. And then in order to use those different kind of financial tools really effectively, I think when I was at the World Bank, I was doing risk management and so on. So when you are investing with financing the project, I think it's important thing is really like kind of identifying different kind of risks involved in the project, like starting with the financial risks, but we have also country risk that would also include the regulatory and then policies, and then many different kind of risks also within the political risk, but also commercial side. When you have a kind of a public, project, you also have a demand risks too, supply side too. So what are the kind of risks that we are really talking about? And I think also from the private sector point of view, again, we don't have really many talent who understand the different kind of risks involved in these kind of public, private, like collaboration project in emerging and developing countries. So that's something like, what we need a specialist doing this kind of work. Then also among the private sector, there are different kind of players with a different kind of a risk appetite. So once risks are really clarified, then different kind of players can come in. I'm going to take this part of the risk, that kind of the risk, and that would be, I think, important things. And another thing is really like maybe policy side work. We like in the financial side would say like finance wouldn't solve all the problems. Finance is just kind of one means. For the finance to really work, the project need to be ready. For the project need to be ready, you need to have a kind of a policy ready. For instance, like maybe like we need probably a common framework for a preconditions. Like maybe what kind of policy need to be there for public, private money to come in. And maybe transition taxonomies or the CO2 data disclosure policy, something like that. And then maybe the quick last one is that depending on like the emerging market or the developing market, we probably need to focus on whether mitigation versus adaptation. Maybe I was also in the group, we are discussing about also a little bit about Africa. Africa expert was, was really saying that like, we don't have anything to transition from because the CO2 emission is so small. It's only like, as a whole continent, it's only 3% of the global GHG emissions. So for Africa, probably most of the countries, what we really need to do is the financing for the adaptation. But then for lots of emerging economies, mitigation, right? So maybe the clear, categorization also for a private sector to come in, that would really help, I think. That's all for me.
Thank you again. You have a very long list, but on the other hand, all those are important. And I'll try to find some ways of answering your, let's say, requirements of risk assessment, risk sharing. All those need, I think, creative thinking. But actually, your mention earlier about the equity investment that a banking group is doing, this is really already quite new, because of course we in the past were more or less thinking in the sense of debt finance, and of course now debt is considered as too much in so many developing countries. So we do need to find that patient first loss or patient equity that we can find. Thank you. Ota-san, could you please?
Again, there's not much to say after Matsumoto-san elaborated so much, but maybe from the viewpoint of the risk management or risk sharing, I think you see in the textbook of risk management there are 4 approaches of risk management. That is to avoid risks, or to mitigate risks, or to transfer risks, or to take risks. And I think as a world citizen, avoiding risks in investment in emerging economies is no longer an option that we can take. I think we have to use the other 3 approaches of risk management. So first, mitigate risks. I think to mitigate risks, information is indispensable or fundamental. I think for example, MDVs or developing financial institutions have much more information on the economies of developing countries than an institution like us. So I think the information sharing between the different stakeholders is absolutely the key, and also sharing, a common data by using the some kind of the data depository would be an option. So in this viewpoint, the newly created net zero data public utility made by the GFANs and also some public authorities is a great opportunity to explore, expand our information sharing or access to data. And then also the disclosure is also important. So in this point, the newly created IASB's S1, S2 standards, when it comes to be implemented, I think it's going to be a great tool for us to really understand where the risks are. And third approach, the transfer or share risks, is also the point that we can cooperate between the different stakeholders. So how much or to what extent banks can take risks, or to what extent national government can take risks, or philanthropic entities can take, or insurance companies like us can take risks. So of course there is no single entity which bear all the risks, but we have to share the risks, and with further discussion, I think the best sharing would be achieved. And finally, take risks. I think my company has been very prudent or slow to take risks. But I think nowadays we see the challenges clearly, and we have money to invest, and we have a willingness to invest. So each one of us can maybe take a little bit more risks to solve the problems in the emerging economies. And to do so, of course, we have to get regulators or supervisors involved. Otherwise, we would be scored by the supervisors. So I think of course, in this point, multi-stakeholder approach is fundamentally necessary. I stop here.
Thank you so much. And actually, thank you so much for mentioning the net zero data public utility and also the ISSP standards, because I'm involved in both work. But anyway, Mr. Murthy again, I think you really know best amongst us about how to unlock the various what's the word, gateways, or maybe find ways of our upscaling quickly financing from outside of Indonesia into really something that would help your energy transition. And of course, we're quite mindful of this difficulty of coal phase out. But I mean, I really believe that we can't just go on pointing fingers at each other. It's really only through closer dialogue, closer understanding that we can somehow make this happen. So could you give us your ideas and maybe even some critical comments on what others are doing?
Yeah, thank you, Kono-san. I think all will start from government planning, government planning and policy. As I mentioned, that the government and PLN has tried to push for a greater energy mix coming from renewable energy for quite some times now. The existing electricity business plan that PLN has issued, they claim as the greenest ever. So Pak Darmawan Prasojo, every time he was on stage, he would always brag about this. But again, energy transitions needs to be clarified further, and the government is recognizing that they are currently preparing the newest energy sector, national energy sector general plan, between 2023 to 2060. So we hope it's going to be issued soon, because 2023 is going to be expired in few days. The draft is already ready. I'm not sure what is the momentum or what is the last remaining issue the government is thinking. But this is going to be important because the predecessors of this long-term electricity plan is much shorter in duration. Now it's going to be until 2060, which is until net zero emission is achieved, right? So it's going to be having, when we see that, we're going to have a comprehensive understanding of what the government is trying to achieve on the outset. And that's going to be followed through by PLN revised RUPTL, or 10 years electricity business plan, because PLN actually holds around 85% of our electricity system. So the PLN business plan is long-term business plan is really important. Because it's going to detail the programs that PLN is going to launch during those period, in much more detail than the government long-term plan. Yeah. And this is going to be even longer than, because usually it's 10 years plan of PLN. Now it's going to be 2024 until 2040. Yeah, so it's 16 years. So I think why PLN is aiming for 2040 because they said that renewable energy accelerations required a long-term process. Yeah. If you build large hydros or large geothermal, it will probably require 5 to 10 years of development. So I think PLN is quite right that their business plan should be longer than they used to. Yeah. So we are waiting anxiously about these two plans this December, as well as probably PLN will issue the revised RUPTL sometimes in the second quarter of next year. But on the outset, I can say that it will have a much bigger renewable energy investment opportunities. Yeah. Again, the base load will still come from hydro and geothermal. But and sometimes maybe within the RUPTL, the new RUPTL, Indonesia will probably start seriously thinking about even nuclear. Yeah. And super smart grid is also going to be key to that plan. Yeah, to connect all major islands in Indonesia, and the coal transitions. Yeah, that will involve some early terminations, and some perhaps retrofitting or repurposing of coal-fired power plant into, well, this is quite controversial still, because PLN and our government is still thinking about using gas, but although it's still much cleaner than coal, then government will need to make sure that the carbon neutrality is still achieved. Yeah. So I think a mix of technologies or advanced technologies will be considered. Yeah, there. So that is going to be the anchor of our activity of all the financing sectors, including PTSMI. And PTSMI as National Development Finance Institutions will be quite central in position, because we are a local intermediary. We work closely with bilateral agencies like JICA, commercial entities like MUFG, as well as MDBs, and even philanthropy. Yeah. So we work in collaborations all this time, and I think we need to work even harder in this spirit. Yeah. I will stop there. Yeah.
Thank you so much again for your detailed explanation of what is in train and what you intend to do, and you meaning, of course, not yourself personally, but Indonesia as a country, and that will certainly help us formulate our own strategies, and also our ideas about how we can best support. And so this really conversation already is, I think, is really quite useful. And now, well, we're almost over time, but well, I think Muto-san, you said almost everything you were going to say, but maybe a final remark, and then I'll just wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just 2 points on maybe the quality side of, in particular, infrastructure. Maybe it isn't purely quality, but following up on Indonesia's really need for the coal transition, I think we have to have a common consensus among all the stakeholders on what would be the definition of that coal transition, maybe especially the speed and the technological change. And I think there has been a lot of endeavors already, like MUFG is doing the Asia Transition Finance study group. We will be members, we were observers, but now we will join the discussions. And then
You're welcome.
there's this GX consortium by the Japanese Foreign Financial Services Agency that will be launched, and I think there will be a lot of exchange on the common perspectives. And I think in our regional market, the Monetary Authority of Singapore or other entities are really willing to collaborate in that front. So that's one. And then another thing is if we wish to create an asset class with all this thing, not just exchanging among ourselves, but really utilizing the market mechanism, we need some leveling. And I wish to mention that there has been a lot of efforts in the among the DFIs and the commercial financiers on the definition of quality infrastructure, and there's already a system called a Fast Infra. The CEO is here. Yeah, and we can create synergies with that platform as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think our time is up. I don't think I can do a good job of summarizing everything that Fukuda-san did it for the first session. But anyway, well, I think each of you, you really mentioned some ideas about how we can do better in terms of collaboration plus innovative or creative thinking. Also, it boils down really to having a proper knowledge base for assessing the risk, managing the risk, and then, of course, sharing the risk. And we can certainly build structures around those products that we can use to really share the risk, while, of course, not being, let's say, wasting the limited resources that we have. Well, of course, we'll have to take the stigma off whatever securitization or other means that we used in the past, which didn't work out well. This time we have to make it work. Maybe it will basically boil down to really the need to invest more in actually the dialogue, the knowledge sharing, and also the creating a consensus around what is needed for each country. And I'm sure for each country the situation is very, very different. Anyway, so apologies for not being so well organized, but thank you, everyone. Thank you to our distinguished panel, and all the best.
Thank you very much for the moderator for the great job. Okay, so I think we're closing here officially by Dr. Muto. With last word, we're over time, so quickly.
Very quick word. I think I personally came here with a kind of like a mixed feeling, kind of like a really a bit of doubt about what kind of a cooperative, I mean, a sense we could create together. But this is the magic of IDFC. International Development Finance Club, we create a chemistry of collaboration and to move forward. I think we have shared that, and we will go forward together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all the participants also for coming today, and we close this session here. Thank you very much.